back inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is hour number 2 of the Jake Feinberg Show here on Power Talk. Please go to powertalk.live, download our free app, stream all of our live local shows, and it is quite an honor to have you make us part of your day today. And without further ado, I want to bring in a tremendous musician, a luminary cat, an arranger, a beautiful pianist in his own right, wound up with the Beboppers in New York, and has continued a phenomenal career in the studios of Los Angeles and Hollywood. Lalo Schifrin, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, thank you very much. It's very nice being here.
Nice to talk to you, my brother. Can I ask you about the first time that you met Stan Getz and what you thought of him?
Well, first of all, I was a fan of his even before I came to the United States, where I was a young fan, a lover of jazz, and I knew who he was. I listened. I had the recordings that he did when he was with the Woody Herman band with the Four Brothers, and to me was one of the greatest tenor saxophones in the history of jazz, and I still think so. So it's not how I met him personally was probably when I was here with Dizzy Gillespie. I was his pianist, arranger, composer, and I think I did. If I'm not mistaken, I did a tour with Jazz at the Philharmonic, Norman Granz, and he was part of that troupe where we made the tours in Europe, especially in Europe, and also part of the United States. I think he was one of them, and I played with him there for the first time.
Right. No, I want to know, Lalo, because you're the man, dude. I mean, really. I mean, we could spend. We're going to need to do 2 hours just on your career. But what I've discovered about Stan in my interviews is that he was really a Jekyll and Hyde character. He could treat you. Some people just say, "Well, he treated me great." But I know the stories about him. I'm curious. I mean, I know that you guys wound up collaborating quite a bit. But can you talk about when you met him? Did you like him as a person, and what was your relationship like with Stan?
Oh no, I did like him. To me, he was a wonderful, warm personality, and he also liked me. And as a matter of fact, he invited me, and I did an album with him. He asked me to do compositions and arrangements, and we were both very, very happy with each other.
Because Dizzy, because those jazz at the Philharmonic, you were doing like Koosh and a lot of like Dizzy tunes.
Yeah.
And, I am curious, at the time, I mean, really, jazz was a subculture, and if you weren't a junkie, then you really weren't trusted. And I wanted to know how you fit into that, and if Stan was in fact really just abusing a lot of hard drugs, even though he was able to get on the bandstand and play.
No, I think maybe I had a different perception. Maybe he was okay at that time. I didn't feel that he was on hard drugs. I tell you why, because there were other musicians, they were addicts, and I felt their addiction, I felt the way they were behaving, the tremors, the lack of focuses, and Stan gave me a completely. I thought he was normal. At least he was normal with me. And I wrote this. I did an album for him, and I wrote a song. I always been. There were two kind of tenors. I mean, there were two kind of improvisers in modern jazz. those who were using a lot of notes, bebop. He was bebop, yes, but he had a lyrical aspect. He was like a romantic tenor saxophone. Even from the times with Woody Herman, like when he played Early Autumn, that solo. So I wrote for him a song. I don't remember the title, but I remember the melody. I'm not
I mean, maybe was it Nighttime Street or was it Reflections?
Yeah, Reflections.
Can you talk? Let's talk about that specific. You wrote a tune for him. Let's break that down. Reflections.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That I wrote, and he loved it. And the proof is that he came with an incredible interpretation and performance.
Can you talk about how Stan? You said you guys had a very warm relationship. Can you point to a time when you guys were together and he showed a lot of love to you?
Well, we met in my house or in the studio where we did the recording. He was very. There was one I remember now. When I'm talking to you, I remember. I remember some. He had a pianist. He had a quartet. I don't remember who was his pianist. Do you remember?
Let me think. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Was he organ player or just piano player?
Who?
You said he was Hispanic, but did he play organ or did he just piano?
No, piano.
Just piano. Okay. It'll come to me. Go ahead.
Well, anyway, I liked the piano player so much that I asked him in front of Stan. I asked him for his telephone number because I was doing a lot of recordings. I was conducting, and I couldn't conduct and play the piano at the same time in a studio. So I needed a pianist, and I needed a pianist who with the styles that would be close to what I was thinking in terms of music interpretation. So I asked his pianist his telephone number, and Stan got a little bit upset. He thought that I was trying to steal. I said, what are you trying to do? You want to steal my pianist?
But so it wasn't Chick Corea, was it?
No.
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 Do you have a year? I mean, was this Children of the World, or was it before? Was this more in the bebop? What?
Children of the World was the title of the album.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to get a year on when this took place. When you wanted to borrow.
It's the same. I think it was the same album.
As Reflections.
Yeah.
All right, I'll have to do some digging on that. Talking to Lalo Schifrin here on the Jake Feinberg Show. I mean, did you? Can you talk about the world of bebop that you? Why you fell in love with bebop? Do you think bebop is an accurate word for the music that Dizzy and Bird and Sonny Stitt and Stan were putting together? A lot of people say it might have just been new music. Maybe Dizzy wouldn't even have used the word bebop. But I'd love to. I mean, a lot of the Norman Granz stuff, I was listening to it. You are not overplaying. I mean, you are really just laying back. And maybe if someone gave you a nod, you might take a solo. But you were pretty reserved on a lot of those sessions. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the word bebop.
Bebop?
Yeah.
Well, that was before I came to the United States, and it was already established name. As a matter of fact, in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, jazz lovers and amateurs and musicians and who play jazz at the beginning they had a club where they play free. I mean, they were playing jam sessions. They started by having a club called Hot Club because they were playing the music of Louis Armstrong, like Louis Armstrong, or they tried to, or like Jerry Lowell Morton and the early jazz. But when when the bebop came, this, some of these people, and that's when I came to the scene, they created a club called Bob Club. Instead of Hot Club, Bob Club. And they were doing the jam sessions, and I started to become very active. As a matter of fact, that was the beginning of my playing jazz and improvising. And I did it because I love it, and I still love it. But at that time, we were not professionals. Although there was many professionals who came and joined us to play it free. But that tells you, Bob, maybe they didn't want to. I'm talking about Dizzy and Charlie Parker, and they didn't want to create a snobbish kind of academic name to their style. It could have been, how are you going to call it? When you are having jazz, swing, modern jazz, they didn't have a terminology exact how to call it. So they call it bop, or bebop.
Right. And do you believe Stan was a major force in the bebop movement?
I think so.
Why do you say?
Well, why? Because he was one of the major soloists who developed, within the bebop, he developed his own style. As I said, more lyrical. The sound was, he was, unlike most of the tenor saxophones, were influenced by Coleman Hawkins and a very hard sound. He was influenced by Lester Young instead. And that was a softer sound, and we invited more to his lyricism. He chose that. Nobody told him what kind of sound he should get. He liked to play like that. And I think that was a different style within the school. Let's say the modern jazz school. He developed his own style, and he influenced some of the others. Like in the Four Brothers, the three tenors. I think that he influenced his colleagues.
Absolutely. No, I mean, those guys had a mutual. Those guys, Al Cohn and Zoot, they all had a mutual respect for each other. Although Zoot Sims said of Stan, he's a nice bunch of guys. Can you talk about, maybe he was nice to you, but can you talk about Stan when he wasn't that nice guy, what he was like?
Excuse me. I think that we have a bad connection. Can you speak a little bit louder, please?
Of course. Zoot Sims said Stan was a nice bunch of guys. What did he mean by that?
What?
Zoot Sims said that Stan Getz was a nice bunch of guys, plural. A nice bunch of guys, meaning he had different personalities. Can you talk about seeing Stan behave differently than the way he treated you?
I really cannot comment on that because, first of all, I didn't know him that well, despite the fact that we worked together in Jazz at the Philharmonic only once or twice, and I did only one record with him. I still didn't know as well as I knew, for instance, Dizzy Gillespie, because with Dizzy I was playing every night for 3 or 4 years, every night. So I knew him very well. Stan was I wouldn't say, it was a very good relationship, and we understood each other musically, but I didn't have the opportunity to know him very, very well personally.
Absolutely. No, how did you know, to a non-musician listening in the world, when you and Stan understood each other musically, what do you mean by that? Can you give an example?
Well, I don't have to give you an example. The example is the record we did together. That's the example.
Can you talk about during that what you remember from that session, and talk about that, because that's a beautiful album, and there's a lot of great compositions that have stood the test of time. So, what was it like working with Stan in the studio? Was there a lot of? Did you have to go? I know that you could put charts in front of him and he could read them immediately. What were some of those amazing genius qualities that he had that made it so easy to work with him?
You see, this is it's a very good question, what you are proposing, but it's a difficult question to answer. I tell you why. Because suppose that you are talking about a relationship in other discipline or another context. Let's say that we're talking about, instead of music, we talk about, for instance, personal, like a man meeting a woman and they fall in love. They don't know why they fall in love. They like each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that this is the same thing.
No, I know.
But,
I dig.
But I'm trying to establish a comparison. We liked each other. We liked our music. We felt that he had the same feeling that I did, and that's all. We didn't have any arguments. He never. I remember that the only thing, and I tell you how he was so careful, and even how he was afraid to hurt my feelings when I was going to call the album Reflections.
Right.
I thought it was a better title than Children of the World. And he liked Reflections. He was along with me. But at that time, whoever was the head of CBS, I think it was CBS Records.
Verve.
Huh?
Verve.
Oh, Verve.
Verve, yeah.
Yeah. He, for some reason, there was something about children going on at that time with United Nations declaring a month for children in the whole. So he wanted to call them Children of the World for that reason, and he told Stan to do that. And Stan was, as I said, he didn't want to hurt my feelings, but he said, the guy wants this, and we cannot say that. He talked to his agent, and they couldn't change it. And he didn't like that title because it didn't mean anything in jazz. Children of the World. I think Reflections invites the record buyer to be a little bit intrigued and feel some kind of what kind of reflection Stan Getz. He's perfect for reflections, but what kind of reflections he has.
I want to be clear about something, because you guys did several collaborations. Reflections was an album that came out on Verve in 1972. That album is called Reflections. But then later, in about 1980, you guys did an album together called Children of the World. So those are two separate albums.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. It's so long ago.
I know. But but the point is forget Reflections, because that one's already in the bank. The point is that you had another name for Children of the World. Is that right? And
yes.
Okay. And then,
I don't remember now which one, but it was not Children of the World.
It was not Children of the World, but because there was some sort of topical United Nations thing revolving around children,
yes,
the producer wanted to call it that. And explain how Stan didn't want to hurt your feelings.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So he was afraid to even tell you this?
No, he did tell me, like when you have two adult people having to say bad news, even if they have bad news, but they have to do it, they do it. And that's what Stan did. He was very mature in that sense, and he was hoping that I was mature too to accept it, and I was. I said, well, what can we do?
Can you talk?
I was happy. I was very happy and honored to work with him. So I didn't care too much if they changed the title of the album.
Did you when was the last time you had a chance to speak to Stan before he died?
I don't remember.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. For a lot of younger cats who are, they want to develop their own individual sound, they want to improvise, they want to take from within and play music from the heavens. Why is Stan Getz a relevant musician in 2016? Explain what separated him as a revolutionary from all other players.
Well, as I said, he brought, I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't call him the sound?
Sure.
Okay, that answered the question. He came with a new sound to the point that people call him the sound. And that was part of the thing. It's difficult to, when somebody has to express his musical ideas or whatever ideas, it could be a poet, it could be a painter, but in this case it's a musician who improvises. He had to bring all the elements together, his elements up to it. The sound was part of the thing. The ideas, which were different from the ideas of Coleman Hawkins or the other big tenor saxophone.
Right. I mean, he came from the Lester Young school. He came from that.
Lester Young was he was closer to Lester Young. He liked him.
Yeah. Right. Right. What did Dizzy think about Stan?
Oh, Dizzy liked him very much.
Can you talk about what he would say?
Oh, Dizzy said that he was a fantastic musician. He said that he had his own personality. He respected him for that, and that in some sense, believe it or not, reminded him of Charlie Parker. Not because they played alike, but because they developed their own language, musical language, both of them. And Dizzy had a lot of respect for him.
That is fascinating. Because, I mean, Bird developed his own language and Stan developed his own language.
That's right.
Wow. Lalo, can we do an interview about your own career maybe in a month or so?
Well, if I am here, I am going to be traveling.
Yes.
I would advise you to talk to my assistant, Jerry.
Of course. it is such an honor. I really want to just talk about you because you're one of the cats. But I just, I appreciate you taking the time today to talk about Stan and your relationship with Stan. But I'll come back and hit you back up for an interview down the road.
Well, it was a pleasure, and as I said, I like your questions, which invite a very. I'm sorry that I did my memory. It was so long ago that my memory didn't help you or me.
Well, I think, if you can just humor me and explain. Maybe you already did, but I think it's a significant when Dizzy said he compared him similarly to Charlie Parker in that he was creating his own language. Could you try to put into words what Stan's language was?
Stan's language was lyrical, melodic. See, at that time, and even in any time, there were not too many musicians who had a lyrical, melodic. If you analyze his solos that are improvised, sometimes you can make a song. If you play them slower or choose some of the notes of that solo, you can make a song after. It happened very, very seldom in the history of jazz. One of the other musicians who had that quality, and it was in a different period, earlier, it was Bix Beiderbecke. In my opinion, this is my own opinion.
So you basically, what you're saying is that you could write lyrics to his melody.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. Hey, Lalo.
Okay, listen.
Yeah.
I'll be glad to have an interview with you because I like your questions, and I felt very comfortable here. So you can get in touch.
Hey.
With my people, and we'll arrange.
Hey, love always, my brother. Take care.
Take care. It was a pleasure. Bye.
Me too. Bye-bye. We'll be right back with Brother Todd Barkin right after this. Sweet sounds of Stan Getz here on a beautiful Saturday afternoon in the desert.